Here we are at part 9 of Nutrition and Metabolism, page 913, and we have an overview here of the reactions of metabolism that lead to nutrition and that utilize nutrition substrates. Here they're differentiating between anabolism and catabolism. Anabolism is that metabolism that's associated with synthesis, so the biosynthetic pathway. We can start, for instance, with cholesterol, and we can make progesterone and then make testosterone and then make estrogen, all of these subsequently more complex molecules. Or we can break things down, which is the catabolism aspect of things. And we utilize that in order to eat, digest food, and create energy molecules or individual molecules for later the synthesis pathways. So things get more complex, but usually we begin with metabolism that breaks things down before we start to synthesize. Okay, so that brings us to this page, which we have been slowly illustrating with different locations for the vitamins, where the vitamins fit, and some of the minerals. So basically all of this is saying to us is that we can get down, we can take the foodstuffs found in our diet that we get from our gardens and from the farms and the stores, the grocery stores, and we can cook and prepare and eat those foods, and they can be broken down ultimately into various types of molecules that enter then the acetyl-CoA pathway, entering the Krebs cycle, and then getting coupled with the oxidative phosphorylation system and producing ATP. That's the big overview. Let's look carefully at the, let's go to the central pathway, actually, to the carbohydrates, and begin with glucose. So here's the glucose pathway. It takes several steps through here to get to pyruvate. This is a 6-carbon molecule, and then we go to a 3 carbon molecules. Pyruvate is 3 carbons. So we've basically metabolized some of these original molecules that are high energy molecules. We've broken them down to a pair of pyruvates, which are simpler to manage, and we get 2 ATPs from that breakdown. This is the anaerobic breakdown right here. In order to take the next step, we must have oxygen. So besides B1, B5, and biotin, we need to have oxygen just to get to acetyl-CoA. If you don't have oxygen, you're stuck here. If you're sprinting or you're going so fast in your physical activity that you can't breathe properly, or that you have to breathe quickly, you can't really hold a conversation. Holding a conversation is an indication that you're aerobically engaged. Once you get past the point of speaking without catching your breath, then you're anaerobic. So that gives you the 2 ATPs. It's not a lot of work, ultimately, and it's not a lot of acquisition, shall we say, of ATPs. Once we get into acetyl-CoA, and we are actually going to go here twice because there's 2 pyruvates. Each one will go to acetyl-CoA. Okay, and we'll enter Krebs cycle. And from Krebs cycle, we'll utilize these, how shall I say, reducing equivalents is what they're called. So we're going to go through the Krebs cycle. We're going to make 2 ATPs just at the Krebs cycle level. So 2 ATPs right here, along with some carbon dioxide. I should make a notation of that. 2 ATPs. Okay, so 2 ATPs here. And so we got 2 ATPs, 2 ATPs. We have 34 ATPs here that are ultimately going to add up to 38. 2 plus 2 plus the 34. So that's what we have in our situation. And so that gets us to where we're going. There we go. Just the way you like it. And 2 ATPs plus the 2 from before, and 34 right here to 38. So 1, 2. These are called substrate. That's because we're actually creating new molecules here, and we're getting energies directly from those molecules to make 2 ATPs. Then over here we're doing something called oxidative phosphorylation, which we'll take a look at in just a moment, and it requires coupling. Okay, so this is the linking of the Krebs cycle to the oxidative phosphorylation. And then let's go over to fat. Fat is actually, this is an interesting situation here because carbohydrates are representing 4 calories, 4 kilocalories per gram. And right there, 4 kilocalories per gram. Proteins are also 4 kilocalories per gram. Right there, 4 kilocalories per gram. Over here we have fat, and fat, or triglycerides, lipid, is actually 9 kilocalories per gram. Okay, so let's manage that little skill right there. Okay, so let's go over here to where the big logs on the fire are represented by the fatty acids, and so we can break down fat to glycerol and 3 fatty acids. So it's called a triglycerol, and 3 fatty acids. Ultimately, the glycerol will come over here and become glyceraldehyde, and that's one of the molecules in the pathway of the glycolytic pathway. This is glycolysis right there. And so glycerol goes that way. Fatty acids come this way, 2 carbons at a time. They become acetyl-CoA. So the acetyl group is made out of 2 carbons from the fatty acid. Okay, and we'll look at that in its individual situation in beta oxidation. Okay, we have our 2 ATPs. So here we're using fat to good advantage, and we're getting lots of ATP because fat has many, how shall I say, pairs of carbons. All the fatty acids in naturally occurring fat or lipids, all of the fatty acids are even numbered. Right, so they're 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 carbons. Okay, over here we have the protein, and sadly they're associating it with meat, but we don't need to. We can always associate it with legumes and grains and broccoli and all of the things that are really high quality. And here we come down, we take off the amino acid. Okay, now we can take amino acids and produce a protein. We can actually exchange one amino acid for another. Once we have the 8 essential, we can make all 20, one into another. And ultimately, in order to utilize this as energy to enter the Krebs cycle here as acetyl-CoA, I need to take off the amino group and just leave the acetyl portion of the amino acid. Okay, so I'm taking off the amino group. Here it is now. It came off. And now I have this metabolic problem. If I'm using just the right amount of amino acids to make all the proteins I need for my entire day, that's fine. I don't have any excess here of nitrogen. I'm in what's called nitrogen balance. But if I have any extra, then I have urea. I have uric acid. I have high concentrations of acid, of hydrogen ion, and that causes the kidney to work really hard to basically do all this work with the acid. The kidney literally has to pump the acid itself in order to make all of this work. Okay, so that gives us the idea then we can always get to acetyl-CoA from any foodstuff, and ultimately we can get ATP.